comfortable with utilizing AI.
Good afternoon. One bit of housekeeping before we get started. The sheets on your chairs have QR codes for evaluations for both of the concurrent sessions and for the full conference. I am pleased to announce that there will be a drawing for fabulous prizes for randomly selected evaluations. Evaluations will be collected through May 1st. You do not need to be present to win. No purchase necessary. Offer void where prohibited by law. This morning, we heard from Dr. Lupia and from Chandra White about the importance of the work we do, the differences we help make, about being cognizant that the brilliant people we support can only do the research they do that changes the world because our work makes their work possible, or at least our work makes their work fundable. 66 years ago, then Senator Jack Kennedy had a long day of campaigning end in this very building. The speech he made is famous for being the impetus of the Peace Corps, but he also foreshadowed RAxMI. This university is not maintained by its alumni or by the state merely to help its graduates have an economic advantage in the life struggle. There is certainly a greater purpose, and I'm sure you recognize it. My friends, together, we are that greater purpose, and together, we make the Michigan difference. And with that, I will turn the podium back over to Chandra White, who will introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Fred. All right, how's everyone doing so far? Enjoying the conference? All right, great. Glad to hear it. Okay, so I'm going to bring up our keynote speaker here, Brittany Fulcher-Kane. Dr. Kane is the Executive Director of Research Universities for Michigan, which is a alliance of 4 state universities: Michigan State, Michigan Technological University, University of Michigan, and Wayne State. It's one of the nation's top university innovation clusters, and RU4M is a leading engine for innovation in Michigan and the Great Lakes region. Without further ado, Dr. Fulcher-Kane.
Good afternoon, everyone. Was lunch good? Yeah. Did I see it was Zingerman's? Yeah, I'm going to hit that after this. So, when I first heard you guys were doing this convening, I thought, what a great idea, right? And then when I got to learn, I got to the keynote, I thought, oh my gosh, who is my fairy godmother? Thank you very much, Sandra. And so, because what you do is so important. You are essentially that makes the research engine go. We like to think it's the faculty and the PIs and the administration, but we know without you, it would not drive it. It would not drive. So let me tell you a little bit about our organization. For some of you who are familiar with us, you might recall we had a different name until this time last year. We were the University Research Corridor. And we were just 3 institutions. Last March, I think it was, Michigan Tech University became Michigan's 4th R1. And we asked them to join us. And so now we are a coalition of 4 R1s in the state. And we changed our name. Corridor didn't seem to fit the state geography very well of where our 4 institutions were. Also, it feels a little dated, like we were talking about the early 2000s. Everything was a corridor. And so we became the Research Universities for Michigan, or RU4M, or as the president who really thought of the idea said, Britt, it's like a question and a challenge. Are you from Michigan? Are you from Michigan? How many here are from Michigan? Woohoo, all right. So, and that's essentially where we are. I think before we get started, I also just really want to thank you, because I don't think we can do what part of our charter is without you. And I see a number of friendly faces, and I know you're going to make some faces at me to keep me going, so thank you. But I just wanted to say you're very much appreciated, and I'm just delighted to be here. And hopefully, as a keynote, you're going on my maiden voyage as a keynote speaker, so hopefully you're in good hands for the next 30 minutes. So I hope to accomplish in the next few minutes the X, talking about the X. And I don't mean the thing formerly known as Twitter, I mean the thing of where we intersect. And the first thing about that is the data that measures our economic value and our impact in Michigan, because our focus is Michigan. And so I want to make sure we talk about that, and I want to talk about where we intersect, where administration is very complex, especially when you're talking multi-institutions and those efforts, those grants, those big-time grants. Okay. Let me take you in the Wayback Machine. 2006. I was toiling across campus in the School of Ed building, getting my PhD, trying to finish the dissertation on how universities collaborate. And what was happening is the three presidents then, here it would have been President Mary Sue Coleman, got together and formed the URC with the explicit purpose of being an economic engine for the state. They wanted to attract business, they wanted to connect to the world, and more than anything, they really wanted to show policymakers the value proposition of our three R1s together. What is the unique contribution of research universities? Because in a state like Michigan, where we do not have a coordinating board, governing board, it is kind of like the Wild West. This is, if you went through the higher ed program, this is higher ed 101, the state spectrum of governance, and we are on the extreme autonomous side. So if you are a regional university, you can say to your stakeholders, you do research, you're a research university. There is no board, no governing body who's going to dispute you. And so in a state like that, it can be for those who are not well steeped in higher ed to know the difference between what our four R1s do and what others do. So that is really where we got started. Since then, there's the map. I promised Chandra I would not do this, so I just put it on the map. You can see we have some physical assets. What's not shown on the map are all the pieces that are not physical, all the relationships that are involved, and all the ways in which we are impacting the people of Michigan and their communities and their livelihoods, their health, their kids. And so, the other thing I like to say is these four institutions are really different from each other. Too often in my career at this institution, at this organization, I would have media people stack them up. Who does the most R&D? Who has the most, this, that, and the other? Who has the better rankings? It doesn't matter for what we do. It matters on how collaborative we are, how complementary we are, and the fact that when we work together, we can solve big problems. And so we have essentially, and I know technically on the rankings, there's maybe one above Michigan, but this is the largest public research university in America, right? Okay. UC, San Francisco they're not like us. We are also the nation's premier land-grant institution. Part of the reason we have this physical infrastructure is because of MSU Extension. And just think about the potential of what we could be doing in terms of improving access to healthcare, all of our institutions working together and leveraging extension. That's on the table. We are also one of the nation's premier urban serving institutions in Detroit. We are all in Detroit, but really our landing pad is Wayne State University. And then finally, we now have a rare rural-based R1 institution in Michigan Tech, and they are all about the doing. They are very much doers, so very exciting. Okay, we are odd. Just be glad you're not Michigan State. They're our fiduciary, and we are constantly coloring outside the lines. We are difficult. We fall outside of your normal protocols and so forth, and we're always the exception. So you do have to do some of the work with us, especially when we do some shared grant writing, and we do some, like I'm going to talk about it in a little bit, our Livable Futures Initiative, and we are grateful. And we're odd, we're hard. It's difficult to do this work. Why do you do this? And I do get to play a lot with innovators and entrepreneurs, and they're always saying about a difficult task, is the lemon worth the squeeze? And I'm going to tell you, in case there's a pop quiz later, the answer is yes. We are. But let me tell you why. It matters why. So this is just a brief slide on what the drivers are of interinstitutional collaboration. Nobody goes into this without having to. You just don't do it. It is hard, it is risky, it takes so much time, and it takes money. Why do you do it? So, at the institutional level, what is your driver usually for collaboration? Is because your two main, not the only drivers, but the two main drivers are essentially money. We need revenue to drive the research machine. But the second reason is because we are not profit maximizing institutions, we maximize prestige. Where do we get that? It matters who you partner with. And let's be honest, the University of Michigan partners with the most prestigious global institutions and companies in the world to do the most amazing discoveries. And I want to thank you for that. Awesome, great job. If we pull in our focus to the state of Michigan, what looks like important work to do collaboratively, you change this calculus a little bit, right? Now, all of a sudden, you're University of Michigan, and I don't know if you've been tracking what policymakers the last few years, they are not as fond of the Block M as we all are here. I don't think I'm telling any tales out of school. They think we're woke. They think they don't need to fund us. If you've seen the House budget that they put out, they're gonna try to take hundreds of millions of dollars away from this institution and MSU. And it won't work, of course, but they put it out there. And just the idea that they have the audacity to put it out there, that there are people who would want to see those cuts to these two flagship institutions, says we have a problem. They look to our endowment as a reason why they don't need it. They don't understand it all. But at the end of the day, they don't have a trust of us, and they're making us pay. And we see this happening at the federal level as well. And so if you are the University of Michigan or Michigan State, it might really be a good idea that the idea of prestige is now who has the most trust and value to the people you're trying to build a relationship with and also raise money with. So the bigger issue, however, is how we're mission driven, right? We want to solve big problems. We want to help people. At the end of the day, we really want to do those big things. We all want clean water. We all want clean energy. We all want new industries to drive economic prosperity in this state. We want smarter kids. We want all these things. How do we solve those problems? And if, again, we have a focus on Michigan, how we do that is by partnering together. That's how we get the impact. That's how we can relate to an everyday Michigander. And that is how we can build things at scale to rebuild the trust that we have lost as institutions, as a sector with the public, and to essentially rebuild that social contract, right? We need to start making sure we are connected with people all across the mitten. And we're talking to them about things that they care about. So that is why we do what we do. We partner, it's hard. Okay, I don't need those now. Now you get to see my AI skills. Yeah, pretty fun, huh? I particularly enjoy the fact that the doctors in the bottom left corner there have apparently the old doctor coats, not like the new ones that we've learned are robes of doctors, but anyway, sorry, little political humor. White coats. But I did see that in there. This is very much, the reason you do it is because when we work together, we are a force multiplier. And I'm gonna run down through a few things in particular. Together we tackle big things because here's what we can do for you when you partner with everyone. We can help expand your reach and those of our other members. Scale, we can get to scale. Even the biggest university, you all, gets even bigger when you add in 3 other institutions. Our total academic R&D conducted in the state is $3.456 billion. I can't really imagine 1 billion, but 3.5 billion essentially. That is 93% of all the academic R&D conducted in the state of Michigan, which is usually in the top 10 for states. That's a big deal for only having 4 when most of those top 10 states have many more than 4, except for Maryland, but they've got Johns Hopkins, so it's a different beast. We are currently at 11 instead of in the top 10. I hate Florida. And you wanna know what the difference for Florida was? Their state government 2 years ago plopped $1 billion down in research. That'd be nice. So, anyway, moving on. Together, we can also make an economic case. Did you know that in fiscal year 24, our 4 universities had a net economic impact? That is the amount that exists in Michigan only but for these 4 institutions. We're not counting everything because, technically some of our things, some of our students, some of our faculty, some activity would go to some of the other institutions in the state. So we don't count that portion that can be substituted out. Really, only that much is like what we can fully account that would be lost if we weren't here. And that total is more than $35 billion. 35 billion. That is an ROI for the state of Michigan, given the appropriations they give us, of 35 billion, or 35 times. So 35 times what they give us. Let me also tell you that footprint, economic footprint, and just, in case you ever get asked, like, most institutions, when they do an economic impact, what they really are doing is an economic footprint. I know Trisha back there, you're like, good, I'm explaining this right? Okay. An economic footprint is literally counting everything. And so like if you're trying to figure out what is your part of the state GDP, that's what you would look to. And that is over 52 billion. That is 7% of the state GDP from these 4 institutions. If you're sitting in the economic development office at the state, and you're like, hey, we've got this opportunity and they're gonna contribute $52 billion a year to the state, what would you say? Well, what do we need to give them? And so that's essentially what the case we're trying to make. Partnerships also attract resources together, and we help connect these institutions to global networks. Administrators, you are the key enablers. You sit where policy, partnership, and problem solving meet and are central to making collaboration. So we're gonna be looking to you more and more. And then finally, partnerships create faster translation of discovery into the marketplace. Here, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this. This is just a couple of the numbers. A couple things I think are of interest are talent pipeline. This is, I will ask this question. When I go and give a presentation most places, I'm like, hey, we have 1.7 plus million living alumni from our 4 institutions. Talk about the Michigan Mafia. So what percentage of those alumni across all these different ages and cohorts, right? How many of them call Michigan home? How many live in Michigan? And people will, because the narrative, let's be honest, they don't stay from our institutions. Yeah. How many? What's the percentage? And they say, 5%? Come on. Someone gets real bold, they'll say 25%. And I'm like, no candy for you. And so it turns out it's 50%. And while we have regional institutions whose not sole purpose, but the really important purpose in the state of Michigan is to educate students in their region, many of whom do stay, those institutions will say, well, 80% or 90% of our graduates stay in Michigan. That's why we should get more funding, right? Well, if that is 90% of, say, 20,000? That's not a lot of people. 50% of 1.7 million is a lot of people. And that's what we deliver. And that's what we got to keep the numbers don't lie. We do a lot of collaboration, but I want that 124 to increase, so stay tuned. And then finally, when it comes to economic development, I know Site Selectors Magazine, you're probably like, who cares about Site Selector Magazine? I did not care until recently either, except that now I sit on the Michigan Strategic Fund Board, which is an oversight body of our state economic development organization. And site selectors hold the key for all of the opportunities in the state. And if they think you're doing really well, then they tell people, and then they come and think about your location. And so being number 4 for talent is huge. So we're making progress, but we're not there yet. So I want to talk about, just real quickly, who are we? What are our pillars? 20 years old, we're not quite old enough to drink, but 20 years, we've figured out a few things. Awareness. This is probably where my team and I spend the most time, is generating awareness and visibility about what all of you do. People ask, what do you do? And I said, I shamelessly promote our 4 R1s. And the truth is, I promise you, I'm shameless, and so I'm really good at it. This is what we're trying to do. We also need to position ourselves as an economic development asset, and we're doing better on that. And then we're often asked, because we are fairly neutral, to be a convening power for groups within our institutions and with partnerships outside. Over the last few years, we've been working to expand our leadership in economic development, tapping into our presidents and vice presidents. We've grown a foundation of data and stories on our competitiveness. And I'll show you real quick on our website. That is largely to drive attention and value for our economic development partners across the state. And we did some benchmarking to other clusters around the nation, like Georgia Research Alliance. How many are familiar with them? No, they're in, yeah. So they're a big deal. They get a lot of money. They've been working together for 50 years. We're only 20, so a little bit older than us. But then also innovation districts like Innovate Pittsburgh. And what we noticed is that we do a lot of surface, a lot of storytelling, but which is important. They all look to us like, how do we do that better? But what we don't do well, and they do, is deepen our impact. So the presidents have been really key on how do we do that. And then finally, even making progress in those areas. Something is not working. What we've all just been through the last year and how many months, is somebody probably counting the days since this administration? It's been rough. It's been rough. And, but let's be honest about where that came from. It felt like it happened overnight, but it's been brewing for a long time. Never have we been at such a point of a lack of trust in higher ed. And we got to rebuild that. And I think we're going to start to see, it's not a quick fix, but we will get there. And so one of the things, I don't remember where I found it. I'm a terrible academic going out of academia because I can't cite it, but I had it up on my board for a long time. You can't market your way out of a decline or crisis. You have to build your way out of it. You guys are at the center of that building. So that's what I really want to talk about. So let me tell you a little more, and I'm going to go through these a little quickly. I need a time check. Thank you, Joseph. Okay, 15, oh good, you're in my hands for 15 more minutes. I love this project. How many are familiar with the Michigan Alzheimer's Disease Research Center? Yes, this is 3 of our universities. They're on their 3rd round of 5-year funding. Did it together. Whoever worked on that helped put that together. That's fantastic. And they are making really impactful work. Both my father-in-law and my stepmom have suffered with Lewy body dementia. And for families navigating that, I don't know how familiar some of you are, but it is a mess. It is really hard. And there are folks in this that we can call and get advice and help. This is huge because only more and more people are going to be experiencing this with their families. And then, of course, this last round, when we added Michigan Tech, I said, because we give them money every year for a seminar, we contribute I should say we contribute money for a seminar. And I said, well, okay, it's really hard to contribute for 3 of the 4 when it should really be 4 out of 4. And they said, that's great, we'll add Michigan Tech. And so they have done that. So now it's 4. So that's kind of nice. How many have worked in the room on the Livable Futures Initiative? In the research, I don't see anyone, okay. Well, if Jill Jividen was around, or Alina, thank you, there was an entire team that put this together at the University of Michigan on behalf of everyone inside RU4M, and they did all the administration side of it. And I got a crash course on what that means. Holy moly, you guys are amazing. So we were able to do a seed grant, first phase. It hasn't been announced yet. I'm pretty sure we're gonna do a second phase. But the first phase funded 5 collaborative teams. These teams all include PIs from all 4 institutions, with this one that has only 3 of the 4 institutions. And what these are planning grants essentially to tackle issues that are really important and impactful for Michiganders. I mean, we are the Great Lakes state, and so this is pretty exciting. We were able to put the money together with the VPRs, and the research administrators at Michigan helped put it together, and they're gonna do it again, hopefully for the second phase. We were asked recently by one of our VPRs and my chair, our chair this year is President Guskowitz at MSU. And so we were asked to put together, what are the ripe areas for collaboration? Where is it we have overlap and complementary strengths? And when we look at 5 years of awards data, and hold the phone, but every year we ask each of the institutions to give us 5 years of externally funded awards data, which we then clean and merge and use as a database to do analysis, like this one. Thank you. I know that's a pain in the butt. I appreciate it. But anyway, so these are the 4 areas that we settled on. One of them for impact, and that's water. There's not a lot of money in water research, but water's important. And the other 3, because the opportunities out there are really important for us, and we have shared expertise in those spaces. Why defense? I know that's a tricky one, because who wants to do defense? In our analysis, what we found with the current defense funding that we receive, it is amazing, actually. It's not all pew, pew, right? Like, it is actually for a whole spectrum of fields and disciplines, including a lot of life sciences and healthcare. So it's very broad. And I know that there are people whose conscience, faculty members who don't want to do research for defense. I understand that. But on the other hand, a lot of the defense work has applications for civilian use and benefit. And right now, the way that the federal government is moving is funding away from the traditional agencies we tap into, like NSF and NIH, into defense. And so, you know, years ago, I think it was before COVID, Francis Collins, who was head of NIH at the time, came and spoke here at U of M, which was his home before NIH. And I don't know how many of you have met him, but he's fascinating. And so he got up and he talked about his job being really hard at the NIH to try to facilitate collaborative opportunities and get people to work together. They're like, you just basically herd cats. And he goes, well, yeah, it is herding cats, but I have a really big bag of cat food. And I think about that. It is a signaling device to researchers, right? We can't do what we do without the funding, and that sometimes means we need to address issues that are of importance to the funder. And right now, that's in defense. And so we're making a bit of a pivot to figure out what we can do. And just recently, I will tell you, our VPRs all got together, and in a very short amount of time, they submitted an information about our shared advanced manufacturing capacity with the US Army. It was a sources sought notification, or SSN. I thought that was Social Security number, but it's not. And lo and behold, not only did we get together really fast, but then the Army surprised us and says, hey, we're gonna be there in 10 days. Can you arrange site visits for us on your 4 campuses? Absolutely, sure, no problem. And we did. and they loved us, and they're so excited to work with us because what we have to offer is amazing and can be really beneficial to what they do. And so we're excited about those kinds of opportunities, as well as some I probably can't talk about yet, but in life sciences. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Here are some, in case you guys were curious about the $35 billion, I added this in here because I also wanted to have the opportunity to thank all of you who provide the data to Anderson Economic Group, who does our study. I don't actually run these numbers. I'm not a real economist. I didn't finish that thesis. And so, but this is what it looks like. This is how it rolls up. And the part I want to bring your attention to is all of you as employees contribute to that $4.2 billion. That is the amount of state tax revenue generated from employees across our 4 institutions across the state, which, by the way, you guys are in every single county. We have RU-FRM employees in every county. That is 4 times the amount of appropriations the state gives us each year. So just again, I know I sound like a broken record, but I told you I was shameless when I promote these institutions. The state is getting back 4 times what they give us in real dollars. Okay, Iris, is Iris folks out here? Yeah, oh, hi. So I brought my Iris cup, but then I decided to drink Coke and it's not up here with me, sorry. I was repping Iris. Iris is amazing. Iris helps us make that case for policymakers and for the public to a large degree. And now all 4 of our institutions are members. You all do a wonderful job several times a year giving us reports, a couple things you might be interested in. We talked about the talent pipeline. Federal and non-federal research funding at RU-FRM universities supported 28,663 individuals, and of them, 43% were students. That's who we're producing. And then you guys can track where they go and things like that. The thing I really love, Jason Owen Smith and I did a op-ed last year, year before, I think it was the year before. I lose track of time. That's what happens when you hit middle age, apparently. And what I learned was, we do $280 million in spending with vendors to fund the research enterprise across the state. And one of those vendors is an ice cream company. And I was like, what's going on in those labs, right? Like, who's getting ice cream? And it turns out it's actually dry ice that they're supplying. So there's that. Okay, I'm not gonna spend too much here. This is some of the information you can find on our website that can be helpful. Data portfolio took forever to do, but we're there. Some of you are young. You're not the Gen Xers who spent their Saturday mornings watching this. So I'm going to fill you in for those who maybe don't know the cartoon. This frog is a lot like our universities in that the person, you can see his hands, the person who found him in a box on the street was amazed because this frog can tap dance, sing, you name it. Amazing. The problem is every time he tried to show someone else, it came out ribbit. We talk to each other and we talk about, oh, we got that $15 million NSF grant, and we all know what you mean. And when we try to tell, like, say, Grandma Joe, it sounds like ribbit. So how do we convey the amazing things that our universities can do in a way that Grandma Joe and our neighbors and so forth? I mean, I gotta tell you, I have my neighbor right over there from where we lived for 20 some years, raised our kids together. She knows this. I grew up working class in Ohio, and I'm a first generation student. So for my parents, when I went all the way and got a PhD, they're like, what? What are you doing? What is that? When do you start? Why do you do it? And what kind of job? How much are you gonna make? And none of it was satisfying. And I have had to learn, like, one way we learn as academics is how to speak academic. But then we have to also know how to speak to normal people who are not part of this world. And we have to make that connection with them. We have to get beyond ribbit. And that is what we are trying to do. I can't say we've always done it well, but we are all on the same page now that this needs to happen because we've got to forge those connections. And one of the things we're doing, I know I said marketing isn't everything, but we are going to do a marketing campaign. We got to tell stories. It's a storytelling campaign, and we're calling it Solving for Michigan. I did want to make it look like see, I did that little, make it look like a equation. My PR team nixed it, so only you guys get to see that part. They said, no one wants to see a math equation, Britt. That's defeating the purpose. So, but what we did is instead of typically we're gonna organize around the industries we focus on and what we're doing there, no. We had really smart presidents who said we need to talk to people about the things they care about, the problems they're trying to solve, and this is what we're doing. And these are the stories that are coming out. And very soon we'll have a joint op-ed from our 4 presidents. I was hoping it'd be this week. They asked us to cut it down. It's Crane's Detroit business. They asked us to cut down our wordage. Imagine telling academics to cut their word count down. Yeah, we did. And so it's going to be out there, and it's essentially making the case that our 4 institutions are unique in 2 ways. One is we are repatriating Michiganders' hard-earned dollars that they send to DC for taxes, right? We bring it home because we have the ability together to compete for and win those dollars instead of going to the coast or the Southwest or, God forbid, Ohio. So we are very excited about this. It is essentially, FRIB. How many of you are familiar with the Facility for Rare Isotope Beams at MSU? We were not supposed to get that. That was supposed to go to Argonne, but we got it. And it was a big battle, and now it's bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars. It's the reason MSU is #1 funder, funded institution by the Department of Energy. And so it's huge, and it has brought in talent. It has brought in private dollars, and it's doing things that go back to and benefit Michiganders. And so, and we set it up to talk about the opportunity, the next FRIB level opportunity, and that's LANL, the Los Alamos National Lab. To get a national lab in Michigan would be amazing. And so that's the call we're making in this op-ed. And then following that op-ed, as part of Solving for Michigan, is gonna be in-depth stories at the level that any Michigander can connect with, can relate to. They may not agree, but at least they're gonna hear the story and they're gonna see where they fit in the story. So that's what we're doing. So at the end of the day, I just want to leave you with these things. I'm not going to read them. But I do want to say, we are here, and we're here. You help us. We're here to help you. I hear you have some ambitious plans. How can we help you? How can we work together? And that's what we're here for. So thank you very much for such a good audience.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Fulcher-Kane. Thank you, everyone, for participating in our keynote session. And now we will head out to the poster sessions, which are poster presentations and poster session, which is in the Pendleton room. Is that correct? All right. Thank you all. See you later.